The Kreg Adaptive Cutting System makes it really easy to cut with precision, accuracy, and safety. And here are a few tips that make this versatile system even easier to use. One of the great things about the Adaptive Cutting System is that you can remove the 62-inch guide track from the project table and use it to make cuts elsewhere. And a lot of the time when you're doing that, you'll remove the track hinges. Before you do that for the first time though, take a permanent marker and just mark the position of the hinge on the track. Then you can easily remove the hinge, you'll do this on both ends, and go make the cuts that you need to make. But with the mark there, instead of having to measure or realign the hinge, all you have to do is slide it on until you hit your mark, tighten the hinge back down, and it's ready to reinstall on the project table. The measuring rules that are built into the Adaptive Cutting System project table make it really easy to get accurate measurements all the time. And once you've installed them and calibrated them, they stay in place really well. But if you've had your system put away for a while, or anytime you're getting ready to start a big project, it's always a good idea to double check that everything is the way you left it. You can measure to double check that, as we show in the owner's manual, or here's an easier way. Once you have the tapes calibrated, just use a straight edge to mark across the aluminum channel. I'm marking here where the 0 and the 10 marks align. Now, instead of having to measure, all I have to do is look down, make sure that the pencil lines are aligned with the measuring rules, and I know that it's accurate and ready to cut. You want to do this on both sets of tapes. Portability is one of the great things about the Adaptive Cutting System. That means you can store it away when you're not using it. And when you're getting it back out and you want to start another big project, it's always a good idea to check that everything's aligned. And that's really easy to do. With the guide track, for instance, the hinges and mounting plates hold it in place. And you can really easily make sure that it's in place by grabbing the tall Versa stops and putting them in the calibration holes out here near the edge of the table. Just drop one in, come down to the other end, and drop that one in. Now, as long as the anti-chip strip is butted against the Versa stop, you know that the track is aligned and all your cuts will be straight, square, and parallel. If you ever do need to adjust the track, that's as easy as loosening the mounting knobs on the plates and sliding the track over so it's against the stops again. The anti-kickback control, this red knob on the Adaptive Cutting System plunge saw, is a great safety feature that you're going to want to get in the habit of using. And here's a few tips to make it easy to use. To start out, have it off. That way when you put the saw on the track, you can slide it back and forth easily and align the saw to start your cut. I like to get the splinter guard just roughly aligned with the end or edge of the piece. Then turn the anti-kickback on. Now the saw won't move backwards, and you know you're ready to cut safely without having to worry about kickback. Now, at the end of your cut, just turn the kickback control off. Then you can slide the saw back out of the way and remove your workpiece. When you're cutting boards to make project parts, a great tip is to always cut the end off of the board. That way you know that it's straight and square rather than rough or maybe not perfect like this board. With the Adaptive Cutting System, that's easy. You don't even need to worry about an exact measurement here. You just need a couple of Versa stops in the table to align your board to. Then set the board where you'll trim just a little bit off of that end. Now you can make your cut and you know you'll have a piece that's straight, square, and ready for perfect project parts. Here's a couple of good tips for cutting small pieces with the adaptive cutting system. When you're ripping a narrow piece, you may notice a little bit of flex in the track just from the weight of the saw. And that's simply because there's not a lot of material underneath the track. The simple solution is to slide in a piece of scrap that's the same thickness, and now the track's held solidly with no flex. The Versa stops and the repetitive stops on the adaptive cutting system project table make cross-cutting really easy. And because there's 2 sets, here's a great tip. You can even double up your cross-cut setups sometimes. So if you're making, say, the frame for a cabinet door, you can set one stop to the length of the stiles, the other stop to the length of the rails, drop the track, and now you can cut both of those pieces accurately with one setup. All of the cutting guides that come with the Adaptive Cutting System project table are great for making accurate cuts. But you may be wondering, what do you do with them all when you have the table stored away? Well, actually, you can store them all right in place on the table. The Versa stops, of course, can just drop into holes in the table, and they fit snug so they'll stay. For the repetitive stops and joining bar, just slide those under the track and lock them down. That opens up room to slip the miter guide into one of the channels and lock it down. Now, the extension bar can just go right into this channel on the back edge of the table. Now, everything's held in place. You can fold the project table down and store it away. When you're done with your project and you're ready to store your adaptive cutting system away, it's a great idea to give everything a bit of a cleaning. By that, I don't mean scrubbing, I mean blowing the saw out with some compressed air. That'll just get rid of sawdust that's accumulated, and that way the sawdust won't trap moisture. It'll keep everything healthy and running well, and you'll know the saw is ready to go when you're ready for your next project. It's also a good idea to blow some compressed air through the dust bag. That gets the fine dust out of the pores in the material and maintains the bag's efficiency. When you're cutting large sheets of plywood, one of the big challenges is always supporting those pieces and keeping everything stable while you cut. With the adaptive cutting system, that's really easy with these optional project table extension brackets. They let you put 2x4s in place that can span over to a Kreg track horse or mobile project center or to another work support. And with those, everything's held in place while you make your cut. And now you can see both the piece I cut and the cutoff are held in place perfectly for a stable, safe cut. Some projects are going to require longer cuts, like ripping a full-length sheet of plywood or maybe ripping an 8-foot board. And with the adaptive cutting system, you can still do that by cutting off the table with 2 guide tracks connected together. Guide track connectors join them and make a solid junction and give you plenty of capacity for those long cuts. Even when you're cutting off the project table, you can still get the advantages of integrated measuring with a couple of adaptive cutting system accessories. In this case, the parallel guides. They lock onto the track and are adjustable for making cuts from 13 up to 96 inches wide. So all you have to do is lock in the measurement that you want on each guide and make your cut. When your project calls for ripping boards off the project table, you can build in accurate measuring for that using the rip guides. They have bars that position right against the edge of your workpiece, and of course, built-in measuring scales so you can lock in the dimension that you want. They're especially handy when you're cutting long boards, like this one with 2 guide tracks. Now you should have a good idea of some of the cuts that you can make with the adaptive cutting system. Ripping, cross-cutting, even cutting angles, both on the project table and off. As you can see, the system is very versatile. So, now you're ready to take your adaptive cutting system and conquer your cuts.